which they say has been closed down. And you spoke about licensing. I don't know if I'm correct. Who is licensing who?
The cinema was run by SK Sterkinico. The land and premises they were using belongs to Same Levy village. So Same Levy refused to extend the lease. That's what we were told. That was the official communication that was public. So it's the lease that was denied extension, not inability to pay rent, but the landlord simply saying, I don't want a cinema anymore in Same Levy. And it had a national impact, because that's the most prestigious cinema that we had.
Sorry.
Okay. The very last one.
Okay. In terms of registration, your society is registered under what?
The Cinema Society is registered as a trust.
I saw on the website Zimbabwe National Arts Council. Do you subscribe to them? Are you registered under them as well?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe the funding you're talking about can also be looked at through the Arts Council. I know they have something.
Okay, we'll close on that one. Now I'm going to ask, because we've already seen your presentations when we came to visit, so I'm just going to ask 5 minutes. So ZIFTESSA 5 minutes, ZBC 5 minutes, then Zimpapers 5 minutes, so that we get more time to talk. So I'll start with ZIFTESSA. If you can just, the next 5 minutes, just give us a brief presentation.
Yes. Thank you, honorable members, and I would like to thank you for inviting us into your prestigious home to give a presentation on the status of ZIFTESSA at this point. I also want to thank the committee that came to familiarize themselves with the status of ZIFTESSA, and this is a follow-up from that. To be brief, I think you saw for yourselves the status of ZIFTESSA. Our core mandate is to train primarily high school students or those who have just finished high school and don't know where to land, or they haven't passed sufficiently enough. So we try to fill that gap and train students in film production and television production. However, I think the model that ZIFTESSA was established under is a little bit outdated. When ZIFTESSA was established, I think in the region, was in the 80s and 90s. Most of our regional countries and partners didn't have any film industries to speak of. But now you go to Mozambique, Tanzania, Namibia, Angola, Botswana, they all have their own training institutes that caters for that. So what am I saying here, honorable members? Basically, I think ZIFTESSA needs to retool, recapitalize, and rebrand so that we cater to the needs of content creators in Zimbabwe. And then if we get any regional players or regional students who want to come to Zimbabwe for training, it will be because of the caliber of graduates that we produce at ZIFTESSA. So, when I say ZIFTESSA should be recapitalized and retooled, it means that we are dealing or we are working with outdated and obsolete models. If I had to ask honorable members right now, what kind of phone do they have? It's probably from this year or last year. We are working with equipment that's over 10 years old. So we can't be expected to train our students to the best capacity with obsolete and outdated equipment. I would also contend that training, I think, is the front line of the industry that we are all here to discuss. ZBC, we feed into that value chain. I'm glad Cinema Society is here. We just, I think we're in the middle of actually signing an understanding, a memorandum of understanding, because they represent, I think, the end user or the end consumer of film and television content. So it's good to see you, Richard, and I'm glad that our honorable members actually invited them to come. In the vein of retooling, well, we are talking about staffing. The library is outdated. Our transport situation is basically operating with one vehicle. Our software, we have to go through other means just to get basic software for animation. I think there was an honorable member who raised the question of, can we see some basic cartoons on everyday issues that our children can watch? We can't do that because our computer lab is basically non-existent. So those are just some of the things that we need your honorable members and the committee to look at. However, we are not sitting on our laurels and crying. At ZIFTESSA, we've established what we're calling a consultancy production unit. In other words, we are actually going to consult or give our consultancy services to clients and script for them, direct for them, shoot for them, and hopefully our partners in ZBC can actually air that. We're actually in the middle of a production with one of your former employees, Vicky Mlilo. She's actually doing, I think, a film on mental health. Somebody mentioned mental health earlier. In addition to that, I think in the second semester, which starts in August, at that break, we are going to start a masterclass program and short courses. Because if you go out there, you find that the model for training is not so long in terms of tenure, 2.5 years, 4 years. Yes, that model has its place, but I feel that in Zimbabwe, we need a lot of short courses where we saturate the space with those who are interested in film and television. So we're talking about 4-day courses for those who just want to know what the industry is about. 6 weeks, and then maybe a more advanced one to 12 weeks. So the potential is huge. The Cinema Society have probably more stats than we do. Honorable Chair, I think in Mashingo we mentioned the issue of a film board. This is something that we can tie in with what Cinema Society does as well. If we have a film board, a central stop of call from any international production that comes in and says they want to shoot at the Vic Falls, you send them to the film board, they pay their fees, 10%, 20%, whatever is agreed to, goes into a film fund that will start funding local productions. That doesn't exist. As Richard was saying, the industry is fragmented. There's lots of different players who serve their own interests, sometimes to the peril of everyone else. I think on that note, I'll end, Mr. Chair. What's my meeting explaining? Thank you.
Okay, ZBC, just 5 minutes. Just.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I'll try to be very brief because the longer meeting was held in Pockets Hill. I think let me just go straight to areas of intervention which we would like Parliament to, particularly this committee, to assist us. Number one is the issue of recapitalization of ZBC. Major state enterprises such as Air Zimbabwe, your NRZ, they are receiving government funding in terms of recapitalization, and I think ZBC is in dire need of recapitalization as we speak. Number 2 will be the issue of foreign debt and legacy clearance with RBZ, which when we start conversing, our Director of Finance will go into full length on. Issue number 3 is on mandatory licensing framework, which is part of the Broadcast Services Act, which is going to come before Parliament. And we seek your support, as this will go a long way into ensuring that ZBC becomes an efficient broadcaster of note. Number 4 has to do with what the colleagues here have been presenting, which is the National Film Fund and Commission, as this will also come a long way indirectly in assisting ZBC. Because currently ZBC is taking the mandate of supporting and funding local filmmakers. But in a more normal sense, filmmakers should be able to make their own films, and ZBC should be able to acquire rights for the films. But currently we are actually funding from the word-go, particularly almost all the dramas you see on TV today, which are coming from independent producers. We are funding directly those dramas from zero to where they are. Number 5 is exemption in terms of the procurement policy in Zimbabwe. You'd see that ZBC falls under state enterprises, and is our procurement, we do it according to the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. But sometimes it is not efficient enough for us because some of the things we get them from outside the country, and some of our suppliers won't be at liberty to participate in the price system. And also in terms of efficiency and in terms of the competition that is now in the field, it is becoming difficult for ZBC to keep up with competition. Because your other independent producers, for example, if you are to get rights for a soccer match, and you are competing with other independent TV broadcasters who do not fall under this price regulation, we have to go through the price regulation, and by the time we finish, it might be too late. We won't have those rights, and even some of the equipment. You might get a situation where there's a breakdown at one of our studios in Pocketsville, but we are then mandated to go through the procurement procedure. But by that time, it's late, and the effect will be on TV. So we are asking for an exemption, just like some of other enterprises have been exempted from that particular law. Allocation and timely disbursements of funding from Treasury. Get a situation where in the national budget, in the blue book, you are allocated funds. But these funds, for example, we are allocated 2 billion, and I'll give an example of last year when inflation was a bit high. We allocated 2 billion, and that 2 billion at that particular time is equivalent, let's say, to 2 million United States dollars. By the time when it comes to ZBC, it would be equivalent maybe to 20,000 United States dollars, and it's affecting our performance and also our recapitalization, particularly when it relates to studios and equipment. Next is capacitation of the same digital project by government. This is a very critical project which, when it's fulfilled, it will play a positive impact also towards the recapitalization of ZBC. I think I won't draw much on this. The next one is critical skills funding in the presidential scholarship. You find a situation where currently we are having skills flight and also brain drain, where most of our experienced engineers are leaving. And this particular broadcast industry requires experience in terms of skills. So we would also want to know if Parliament is able to lobby that also government prioritize these critical skills in the presidential scholarship programs. Thank you very much. I think we'll leave much more of the detail to the discussion. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. Let's go to Zimpapers. 5 minutes.
Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Chair. Unlike probably my colleagues here, Zimpapers is a private company that is invested in by Mass Media Trust through the formation of the trust by government earlier on, I think at independence. So we have a dual mandate, which is shareholders and Zimpapers expect to see a return, and yet the government expect to see the Zimbabwe story being told to as many people as possible. So we have that dual mandate that we have to follow. However, I would want to, when the committee came to Zimpapers, we were presenting who we are as a company, what we do, where our money comes from, and so on. However, talking as a media player and also talking to the committee, I think it is very important for us to paint a picture of what the media looks like today. We are in broadcasting and we are in print media at the same time. I think most of us are aware that the print media industry is in serious trouble, whether it's Zimbabwe or the region. There's migration to digital media. And yet there are a lot of hundreds of kids who are going into journalism school expecting to get employment from our newspapers and our broadcast stations, which is not likely to happen because a lot of them are beginning to close down. A lot of them are distributing fewer and fewer newspapers. And if you go to South Africa, big media companies like The Star are now distributing less than 10,000 copies a day. Others like Media 24 are actually talking about shutting down. That's the reality that is confronting our print media business in this country. And I think it is a matter that the committee needs to be really obsessed with. What is going to happen tomorrow? What is the future of the print media industry in our country? Those kids are going to school hoping to become print journalists. I don't know how many years we'll give it, but it is a problem. In fact, one of the problems that compounds our business is the inability of debtors paying on time. I think when you came, you were told the story, and when the permanent secretary came, also told the story of how governments, different government departments are owing over $12 million to Zimpapers, which is not coming. And some of these debts, it goes back to almost a year. And by the time it is paid, really the value of that money is insignificant, especially for an industry that is not doing well. My submission really would be on what is it that we need to worry about? What do we need to do going into the future? Parliament, and I think your predecessor a couple of years ago, did a tour of Sweden and Denmark to look at the media models that are operating in that environment where the government is directly involved in the funding of media operations. It was a delegation that included people from Zimpapers, I think ZBC as well, Parliament, as well as MISA and other media players. And one of the key models that came out of there was how do we do public service journalism and introduce the whole concept of press subsidies in an environment where we think the media industry as it looks at the moment will not be able to survive. What is happening there is serious migration. I'm glad that Nakule Shamu is here. When we started out going in journalism, you would buy your newspaper at the bus terminus. And thousands of newspapers that you buy at that time. Today, no one buys those newspapers. But eyeballs on digital media are increasing. We have, I think for the Herald site, I wrote probably between 1 million to 500,000 people who read us on social media, but there's no money. Someone has to fund that journalism. And it's not being funded by digital media at the moment, although the audiences are there. But we believe that Parliament can play a crucial role in sponsoring what is called public service journalism. Because as media, we are the fourth estate. Just as Parliament oversees the operations of the executive, I think the media also has an important role in our democratic space in terms of watching over policy, administration of policy, governance issues, and community news. And this type of journalism is essential for a developing country such as ours. So one day we could wake up and then find there is no media industry, there's no fourth estate, because it can't fund itself. So we wanted media that promotes transparency and accountability informs and educates the public, encourages people in the democratic process, supports nation building. But how is it done? There is a paper that has already been done on how funding can be done through press subsidies. When, I think Onosha would bear with me, when Zimpapers was bought and the mass media trust was created in the 80s, they created mass media trust so that it can promote the indigenous Zimbabwean voice to be heard in the media. This is why mass media trust was in Ziana, was in Zimpapers, among other assets. And today, how do you then go back to that space where public media is supported directly? And there are press subsidies which can be part of supporting public service journalism. They can provide financial assistance to media organizations that produce journalism in the public interest, ensuring that such organizations can continue to operate despite market pressures. Right now, it's market pressure. So we are fighting for a very small cake. When you look at the revenues that are coming out in terms of the newspapers, they are really pathetic. The market on its own cannot sustain the development and the future of a print media industry. The digital media, yes, it will come, but the dollars are pennies. They will take a long time to come in. So we are suggesting that there is need, which comes from Parliament, irrespective of political affiliation or ownership of newspapers, that Parliament can start supporting the sustenance of media houses and media companies. Obviously, there will be a criteria on what can be used. In a model like Sweden and Denmark, where press subsidies are provided to newspapers that serve national interests, Kenya has also started experimenting with that. This can be done through either a foundation or a trust, just to make sure the survival of the media industry going into the future. So this is one side of or this is one head that we as Zimpapers. But in terms of the broadcasting industry, there is a real challenge. I think when you liberalize the airwaves in 2001, and when ZBC's monopoly on television and radio was stopped, I think the spirit of that was to have as many players as possible to come into the market and be able to give Zimbabweans in terms of variety of voices and opinions and so on. What has happened with the television space is there is no platform that television companies can broadcast. The platform that is there is a DSTV foreign platform. So most of our companies, including ZBC itself, operate on the DSTV platform. That tomorrow, if their business, just like Steak Ineco was just put out of business the same way, if DSTV tomorrow says no more, it means ZTN, it means NRTV, it means 3K will be out of business. Because on the alternates, we have the GTT platform, which my colleague was talking about now. There are only a total of, I think, about 50,000 STB boxes that have been bought by government. Of those 50,000 boxes, I think less than 10,000 have been sold, which means there is no audience. And yet the 6 media companies that have been licensed to do television are expected to speak to households of what? Our population is now about 12 million, 14 million, which 16 million, which cannot be reached by Zimbabwean content. Most of the Zimbabweans who are watching television are watching Netflix, they're watching other open view or VHD and so on. So there's the DTT platform needs serious funding so that those companies that have invested in television can get rewards, can get advertising dollars, can get subscription and so on. At the moment, it is not possible. What government is talking about, and we are happy that government is now looking at possibilities or amending the Broadcasting Services Act and looking at issues around licensing and other sections that allow foreign investment, which was not allowed initially. So the Broadcasting Services Act really has to interrogate thoroughly the viability of the television industry in this country. There has to be a platform. I think at the last count we had about 18 transmitters on the DTT platform. And of those 18 transmitters, I think the process of installing transmitters had started in 2015. I think some of them are probably not working as we speak. So there is no platform to broadcast. Our colleagues are fortunate in that they still use the analog platform, where every Zimbabwean throughout the country can still have access to broadcast content. But at the moment, the DTT platform needs to be funded, There has to be new money put into GTT so that the whole country has got transmitters that every player in the industry can access household and eyeballs that ensure viability of their industry. So we have done a paper which was submitted to the ministry to see what else can be done to support the development of the broadcast industry. Same as with radio. Some of our radios, like Star FM, is a national radio station that does not have access throughout the country because there are not transmitters that have been bought. I think when the ZBC Commercialization Act was introduced in 2001, there was probably not enough thought had been given to say how does then transmedia operate when ZBC has gone away. Because ZBC was playing the dual role. It was the transmitting authority, it was also the content provider. But now transmedia does not have enough funding to roll out transmitters throughout the country. It has to rely on charging levies to players in the radio and television space, whose players are not making enough money at the moment. And our proposal is that let's relook at this thing and see, do we need a moratorium for operators in the broadcast industry, that for a certain period, once government is building up infrastructure for the transmission network, operators are not paying levies at the moment because they have to create jobs, they have to put money into, they have to invest into infrastructure and equipment and so on. So our proposal is that there be either a 3 or 5 year moratorium, now that we have a platform to talk about and people can be levied on the basis of reaching that the audience is, then they can begin to make money. Right now there's no industry to talk about very much. The film guys who are doing film productions and investing money into film, we can't afford to pay for those films because that's the reality of it. Because it does not make money, there are no eyeballs out there because the infrastructure is still to be built. So hopefully the Ministry of Information will be given enough funding to begin to develop fully a transmission network on the DTT platform, which is also based on current technology. I so submit, Chair and honorable members.
Thank you very much. That was very useful to us. So we're going to get some questions from honorable members where they need some clarification and so forth. I'll start with ZIFTESSA. When we visited ZIFTESSA, I think honorable members were shocked to see the appalling state of your building and lack of equipment. Last time we had the Ministry of Information here, and we obviously did ask those questions why ZIFTESSA is in the state that it's in. I think one of the questions that we wanted to ask you was that, are you more better being part of or being classified under the Ministry of Higher Education than being an entity of the Ministry of Information? I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Honorable. I think I mentioned this last time. Film is unique in that it spans across 3 different ministries. Ministry of Information, Ministry of Culture, and in the case of ZIFTESSA, Education. Ministry of Education as well, because that is our core mandate. So I think as a ministry, my principles are currently trying to get the Public Service Commission to classify ZIFTESSA or put ZIFTESSA as a department of the Ministry of Information. They called us and asked our opinions, and I said it doesn't really matter where we are as long as we retain a semblance of autonomy and academic freedom for the staff and our operations. And they said to me, well, once you're a department of the Ministry of Information, there's no going back. So that is where we are regarding that. So it's the same question that my predecessor was grappling with, Dr. Jouara. Do we stay a department or do we remain a parastatal, fully fledged parastatal? There's an upside to being in the Ministry of Education, but I don't think that is my call to say. I would, I think if properly retooled and properly resourced, we can function in either ministry.
Okay, thank you. Then just as a small one, do you need to be called ZIFTESSA? Because when we visited your school, the students we saw there were just students from Morale, not even nationwide. So why would you be called School of Southern Africa? I know the history with the United Nations and stuff, but why, sorry, with UNESCO, I think. But why should you be called ZIFTESSA? Is it necessary?
Thank you, Honorable. I don't think it is necessary. ZIFTESSA needs a total rebranding exercise to whereby we rename and call ourselves something that is more apt. Academy of Film and Television, Academy of the Arts, something that is more international to attract regional players as well as other provinces.
Honourable members, anyone with a question for ZIFTESSA so that we finish with them? I'll probably take 3 questions on Honourable Hamoswa, Honourable Mafunga.
Okay, my question relates to the current education 5.4. What are the opportunities for you to work? Sorry, my question relates to the government's focus on education 5.0. So I want to know opportunities for ZIFTESSA to work in collaboration with universities, because they have innovation hubs, and maybe are there any chances or opportunities whereby whatever you do can be accommodated within the innovation hubs? Is it something possible? And linked to that, we heard that the South African filmmakers, the players, were trained in Zimbabwe. Considering that, for instance, currently Zimbabweans are flocking to Zambia just for studying nursing. Is there another opportunity to revitalize and also to get money through education where you attract the students from the region? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Mafunga, just asked.
Thank you. I wanted to find out, do you do exchange programs with other international film schools? Do you collaborate in any shape or form?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. How much money did you bid for 2023? And how much will you allocate?
Thank you, honorable members. To answer the first question, we are actually drafting an MOU with the media department at the University of Zimbabwe, because to cater for the 5.0 aspect of the curriculum, ZIFTESSA is unique in that it offers what we call foundational courses, which have to do with African aesthetics, African text and symbols, media law, communications, research methods. Every student that comes in is first taught and grounded in these foundational subjects. So collaborations are ongoing. I have contacted the University of Zimbabwe, I've contacted MSU, because they are stronger on the theoretical side of media training. And ZIFTESSA, I think my colleagues from ZBC and elsewhere will agree, is more practically oriented. I hope that answers that first question. The second question, in as far as exchange programs, we currently do not have any, any exchange programs with a university or an institute. However, I am currently, again, for those who don't know, I'm less than a year at ZIFTESSA since I started at ZIFTESSA. And I'm currently in talks with my alma mater at North Carolina School of the Arts in the US to see if we can do some sort of twinning project as a start, as well as I think the university in Ghana. My predecessor visited that university, and I think the model of ZIFTESSA is based off of the school there in Ghana. So I would want to make my own trip there, as well as maybe India, and I think somebody mentioned Iran, and Algeria even. They have, I think, one of the most vibrant film industries in Africa. So it's an ongoing process, Honorable. Exchange programs. In terms of finance, Honorable Chair, if you allow me to, the clerk to swear in my accountant who came in late, I think he can give a basic brief on how much we bidded for the 2023 and how much we were allocated. And just give a quick brief on the finance situation as it says.
Mr. Chairman, when saying 2023, I'm talking of the current budget.
I'm sorry?
In saying 2023, maybe I might mislead you. I'm talking of the current budget, how much you bidded for and how much you were given. Just make it clear.
Mr. Million, if you can help me here. I don't have it handy on me.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My apologies for coming in late.
Sorry, you have to take the oath before you can give any evidence.
I should do it standing in.
Can you please help me? You can read the white statement.
Oh. I, James Million, swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
I'll just give you 2 minutes to respond to that question. Just how much did you bid for and how much was allocated to you?
Thank you. I will start with the capital expenditure budget because that's the one that should recapitalize the school. I will not use the figures that I use. I will not use we budgeted in millions, you remember? So it was around 1 billion something. So I will convert that into USD so that it makes sense if you allow me. The budget that we presented in terms of capital expenditure, it was around 460,000 US dollars. That was for capital expenditure. We were given something around 50,000 US dollars on our capital budget. The salaries, I will not talk about that because they are always funded fully, so we have no problem in terms of the salaries budget. The recurrent expenditure budget, the one that we use for our operations, we budgeted for something around 130 million. We would add that with what we get from our students and also what we get from the canteen rentals. So there's not much problems again on our recurrent budget. The problem is on capital expenditure budget, which is the one that we can use to recapitalize the school. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
You bid 130 million, and how much were you allocated?
For recurrent expenditure, we allocated 130 million.
That's what you bid it for?
Yes. Sorry, however, we also wanted to recruit new members, so we are not allowed to recruit new members on that recurrent budget. That's what was left out on that budget. We were given recurrent expenditure to meet the current staff levels, not to add any new members. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have to cross-check that because to my knowledge, you actually got more than you actually asked for. If my memory serves me right, you got more than what you asked for. Is it that true?
In terms of? In terms of recurrent expenditure, no, we didn't get more than what we asked for.
We'll have to check with on the blue book, but I think we remember having that conversation in Parliament. Anyway, let's go to ZBC. Any members who have got some questions for ZBC on what they just presented?
Yeah.
Honorable Shaman.
Chairman, through you. Mine, I think, can be answered by both ZBC and Zimpapers. I would like to know the advertising cake in this country. How much is available for advertising?
I think this one is a broad question. Any of you can answer that.
In terms of television, we try to do a rudimental analysis of how much everyone has got, and we do numbers from the beginning of the year. I think January there was more activity. I think we were January we were at about 150,000 US. February we went down to 7 as an entire industry.
Sorry, I'm not talking of what you earn. I'm talking of what it is that industry as a whole, the advertising industry, says this is the cake that we have for advertising. And then obviously we divided into television, newspapers and so on. How much does Zimbabwe talk of when we talk of advertising and advertising cake?
It's very difficult to quantify for newspapers, television, radio. We've not done a holistic number of how much we've earned, but for television we are able to give you those numbers. I think most of the time is the cake per month for the whole industry is less than 200,000 US dollars for all of us, the 6 players in the television industry. For print, for everyone, I won't have figures. What we have will be circulation figures. For radio, about 200,000 for the entire industry. So what we are beginning to discover is that there's now more money being put into radio by advertisers because they are believing radio is a better reach. For print, a lot of our companies will survive on things which are not traditional advertising, like your annual financial reports, that they don't plan for when the beginning of the year and want to do campaigns. A lot of the campaigns that used to come out, like EcoNet and so on, are now, they've put a stop to those. So it has been dwindling, the advertising cake has been dwindling. I don't know what the experience of ZBC are.
I think the experience is more the same, where there's a shift from TV to radio. I think it's mostly because of the reach. Like earlier on presented by Zimpapers, when they were talking about we currently don't have a host, and DSTV does not reach particularly the rural areas where your Radio Zimbabwe reaches. So you tend to see that advertisers are now focusing mostly on radio. And also the other effect which is coming into play is the social media effect, where it's players on social media are cheap, and at the same time they also command almost the same viewership or followership with your national broadcaster. I'll just give a simple example of, you have, let's say, someone like Madam Boss, who's got maybe 500,000 followers, and it's almost the same, you'd see on your Facebook, it's almost the same maybe with ZBC News Online. So now, because of the red card, what ZBC will be charging and what Madam Boss will be charging is completely different, the margin. But the ZBC will be looking at other operational costs, which probably the other players will not look at. So you tend to see now most advertising companies opting for the cheaper cheaper option, which is now the digital platforms. And also in some instances, most of these companies also now have their own platforms on digital, where they can actually advertise on their own pages, and they are not compelled to now do business with the broadcasters. I think I'll just add on for what has already been presented.
Thank you. That's very useful. Any members with questions?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, you raised a very important point in terms of comparing social media, Madam Boss and ZBC being at par. Is ZBC innovative enough to create their own Madam Boss or create their own comic pasta so that they drive traffic towards ZBC and generate income? And then secondly, I wanted clarity on, you mentioned that the PRAS process affects your ease of doing business in terms of efficiency. What did you have in mind? Do you want an exemption to a certain amount, or could if your cost of repairing a camera is $200, then it doesn't need to go to PRAS?
Platform, which is called in broadcast terms, we call it an OTT, the over-the-top system, which will house all our TV channels, all our radio channels onto one online platform, as well as give video on demand. But also we are also then driven by the idea of creating an industry. So sometimes it might not really be necessarily an issue of creating your own, but coexisting with those that are there. So you see that for the past 2 months, we've been creating synergies with the local content creators, your Madam Boss. We've called them to Pocket Hill. We've come up with workable solutions where both of us can grow in that instance. But we are definitely looking into growing bigger than what we are, and we can't be a stubborn fly which follows the corpse to the grave. We need to move with times and to adapt with the new changes. On the second question, I think if you may allow me, so that we can also maybe through your office present to you a proper paper on how we wish to be exempted, just like how the other state enterprises. I know for certain it should be pure USB or which got the particular POSB, yes. They've got that particular exemption because their argument was to say that the level of competition that we are in, if we are to adhere to the price regulations, we will always be behind with our competitors. And it's the same with ZBC. Yes, price would work during the time when we had the monopoly. But currently, when we have other broadcasters now coming into play, it means if we are to follow this channel, ZBC will always be number last.
Thank you. Maybe 2 more questions.
I have a follow-up supplementary. The media now is saying they want to bypass PAS as a solution. But I would want to challenge them. If you also find out what is the system with other countries, because I think PAS was established to serve a particular purpose, to also deal with the issues of corruption. So are we then now accepting that we have failed to also come up with measures whereby PRAS can be streamlined, that the processes become easier? Is bypassing it the best option, which like you were saying, the media plays a role in terms of ensuring accountability in the democratic processes. So critiquing those policies, institutions, is also one of the roles of the media. What have you also checked with other countries? Or if you have not yet done, maybe we need to find out also. But we agree with you, but also want to find out, can it be possible that the process of PRAS can also be revolutionized, that it works better for the people of Zimbabwe? It's not the ZBC alone, but other ministries, even local authorities, are also complaining. But we have not heard of alternatives to make sure that the process is actually done in an efficient and in a timeless manner. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, and I totally agree with you. I think the system here is not particularly to bypass, but to get certain waivers in certain instruments. I'll just give a simple example. Let's say with sporting activities, or let's say World Cup rights. You have whereby maybe prizes limiting your direct engagement to, let's say, $25,000, and you have a company which is the sole owner of World Cup rights for that particular time, charging you 100,000. And now you can't engage that person because you have to go through a tender process before you award them. But by the time you go through that, World Cup ingabera. So these are some of the simple issues which we just need special waivers on. And I totally agree, and as I said, when we present our position paper, we would have done that homework to see how other broadcasters particularly, because especially with, I'm quite sure Zimpapers here will agree with me, but most of the things that we buy for broadcasting, they are not in Zimbabwe. I think because this was due to the monopoly that ZBC had over a long time, there were no companies interested in supplying equipment and opening shop in Zimbabwe. So most of the equipment is bought from outside the country. And with what I presented before, say if you've got a technical fault which requires something that is in South Africa, but that thing is already hindering your efficiency in your broadcasting, but you have to wait for 3 months to acquire that because of the procurement system that is there. And by that time, the parliamentary committee would have called us to say what is happening with ZBC. So these are the areas that we want the special waivers of, which we will present on a position.
So, Honorable Shami.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. DTT, how much is needed for you to complete that program? And do you pay DSTV? If you do, how much are you paying?
Thank you very much. I will let the engineer respond to that one. He's directly involved in the DTT project.
Okay. So in terms of what is required, you pardon me, I only have at hand figures for what it takes ZBC to reach the levels it envisages. So from the ZBC end, we require about 25,383 US dollars. That's what we require from the ZBC end. But globally, you will forgive me for not carrying the figures, which includes the transmission network as well as the monitoring network for the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe.
So this 25 million, is it for just for ZBC alone?
Yes, this is for ZBC alone.
What in particular? Are you talking about the studios?
We are talking about digitalization of the studios, which also includes the content hubs, which span in all the provinces. We are talking about the outside broadcast facilities, which will also be catering for regional locations. We are talking about the media asset management system and related infrastructure, among other things.
Okay. And the platform that was mentioned by which is the monopoly of DSTV, what is the agreement?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, I did not get the question.
Okay, let me assist there. I think that platform, the rule is for DSTV to operate in Zimbabwe. That's for us. It might not apply to ZTN, but for ZBC. For DSTV to operate in Zimbabwe, they are mandated to carry the National Broadcasters Channel. What we are obliged to pay for is the transmission fee.
What we do have as an expense is the contribution of the channel from our pockets use broadcast center to Randburg, where DSTV is operating its multi-platform facility from. That one, it's we are using IP contribution, so we are just paying for internet services from our local internet service providers, the likes of Liquid, T1, and so on.
Thank you, Honorable Member. ZTN has a license agreement with MultiChoice. The MultiChoice actually pays us something like what, $600,000 7.5 million rand over a 3-year period for them to carry our contents. So that we have a license deal, but they've just advised us because they're making, why I made that point, MultiChoice is making serious losses and they're about to be taken over by France Canal. Yes, they made a loss of about $4.something billion last year. They pulled out of Malawi, I think last year or the year before, because of viability challenges. They've told us that they might not come back with a license deal where they will pay us when our license expires in 2025. They might carry on carrying us. They assured us that they will carry on carrying our signal, but they will not be in a position to pay. They are reviewing a lot of their agreements with other broadcasters because it's not viable for them.
Okay. Yeah, so from me, I think from both ZBC and Zimpapers, I wanted to know for ZBC how much the legacy debt is, the one that you want RBZ to clear out. And for Zimpapers, I wanted to know how much you are owed by government departments so that we can put this in the report and maybe pressure the government to pay off some of the money that is owed.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me allow our FD to respond to that one.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. There are about 2 questions. I want to separate the two, if you can allow me, Chair. The first one on legacy debts. Here, what we are looking at are foreign legacy debts. We've got a total of $4,353,023. These foreign legacy debts, they date back to 2013, and they are mostly on content rights, content provision in terms of sporting. ZBC was being offered sporting rights over this period, and they were failing to pay various agencies. And currently, ZBC is having a problem in acquiring this foreign content. In our submissions, we actually give you the breakdown of the foreign liability. The second aspect, Chair, if you may allow me, is on acquittals. You heard from my CEO saying that we have got a challenge in terms of acquiring equipment outside the country. Why? Because ZBC has been red flagged by the RBZ. ZBC was red flagged because it failed to acquit $847,138 USD. This amount emanated from equipment which was brought into the country, and ZBC failed to give bills of entry to the RBZ. So the RBZ then red flagged the ZBC because of flouting of the exchange control regulations. And this is seriously affecting us in terms of making these foreign payments, because every time you want to make a foreign purchase, there is a penalty charge amounting to 5% of this total amount I've just given of $847, $847,138. 5% of that. Each time when you want to make a foreign payment, you first of all pay the 5% of that amount before making a payment for the equipment. And previously, we managed to get a waiver sometime back in 2021. We were given a 6 months moratorium by the RBZ, and it enabled us during that particular time to procure, but then it expired. And we are humbly appealing through this August House to have this total, to have a total waiver of this amount from the RBZ. That way, it will assist a long way as ZBC in acquiring some of its much needed equipment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, if I get you correctly, for ZBC there are two issues. There's one to do with the legacy debt that you owe to outsiders, to outside agencies, that you want, to be taken over by the government. 4 million. And then the second thing is that you want condonation with with the RBZ, so that they lift the red flag that they have imposed on you. Okay. And Zimpapers.
Thank you, Chair. The total amount that we are owed by the government and different government arms is 12.6 million, including Parliament itself. Although I think we received a payment of 1.2 million.
We received 2 million. It was well in excess of that 1.2, which is now the balance.
From Parliament. So it's about 12.6 million that is...
12.6 million ZIG or...
ZIG.
Yeah. Okay. And you 2 million from Parliament?
We were paid 2 million from Parliament a week ago. I think their balance is...
The balance is now 1.2 million. Yeah.
So this is all part of the 12.6 million ZIG?
Yes.
That you are owed by the government?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, Chairman, will they be in a position to, through the chairman, to avail the outstanding amount ministry by ministry?
Yes.
If you could submit that to us, please, then I think that would be helpful.
Just one more check. I wanted clarity on the 5% that ZBC has to pay every time they make in international procurement. So when you are charged that 5%, does it deduct from the 800K you couldn't acquit, or it continually gets charged until you produce the paperwork for the equipment that came or didn't come, that you didn't demonstrate that it came?
Thank you. You're quite right in your explanation, because the RBZ is asking ZBC to produce the documents. Unfortunately, I did mention it because it's a long story. Unfortunately, some of the documents which they were asking us to produce, we failed to get them because there was a fire which broke out at ZBC some years back. It's around 2013, and most of the documents were destroyed. We tried in all in vain to get the necessary documents to submit to RBZ, but we failed. So you're quite right in your explanation, Honorable.
So the money gets deducted every time you pay 5%, or is a lifetime arrangement?
The money is not deducted until we have proved to RBs and the documents which we are failing to provide because of the fire which broke out at ZBC some years back. Some of this equipment, they include the OB vans, which we are saying, those big OB vans, when they were bought and came to Zim, they were not cleared by Zimbabwe. And these are some of the papers which we're looking at. And each time when we approach them, they actually ask us to say, give us the documentation. But we have failed to provide that documentation. Thank you.
Yes.
We just wanted to add that we had made a proposal to ZIMRA to have a set of arrangement with what government is owing us, because we are being made to pay tax on money that we have not received. So if we invoice government for advertising, for instance, and we haven't received that payment because of fiscalized invoices, we are expected to pay tax at the end of the month. So we had said our total owing from ministries, could there be a set-off on terms of our tax, so that we are then not affected in terms of our tax certificates and so on. But that arrangement was not accepted at that time, and we would propose maybe through the parliamentary committee, it could be an alternative.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. You wanted to add something?
Yes, sorry, through you, Chair. Maybe it's a related issue where I thought, Phil, you might also need our list from ZBC of some of the government entities that are owing us as well in our marketing side. So we can submit it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to wind up, so obviously ZBC, we are really in support for recapitalization of ZBC. We are going to look at the issue of the legacy debt clearance, the mandatory framework for licensing, which is coming in the Broadcasting Services Act. And then we are also going to look at the issue where you said you wanted to be exempted from the Procurement Act, and obviously timely disbursement of funds from the Treasury. And I'm happy to inform you that we are starting our inquiry into Zim Digital. So I think you've been notified that we will be coming to, I think, Montrose Studios sometime next week. That again will speak to what the Zimpapers were saying about the transmitters, which are currently 18 at the moment. That is the inquiry that we're doing. We're going to visit some of the transmitters across the country, and then we are going to put our report together and ensure. So we want to ensure that we finish this digitization project, which was started some time ago, I think 9 years ago, or was supposed to be finished 9 years ago, but it's still ongoing. So we are very committed to that, and that is our top priority as a committee, that digitization does happen. I know that in terms of appropriations, there was about $5 million appropriated to the Zim Digital project at the last budget, and that was appropriated in US dollars because of the special case of the nature. So we are going to push that. The sooner we finish the inquiry, we are going to push that so that by the end of this financial year, we'll have got a lot of money to add more transmitters across, so that there is more reach for ZBC, there is more reach for the radio stations, so that you can start to realize the revenue that is actually needed. We are also going to look into the issue where you said you wanted to be a look at the presidential scholarship to include some of the expertise that are needed within the media industry. And for Zimpapers, I think you rightfully mentioned that the future of the fourth estate is at stake because of technological advancement. It's good to have technology, but it also affects some areas like the print media, because not a lot of people are now reading the actual newspaper, but they'll just go online. I read the Herald online. I always, almost daily, I just look at the headlines and stories of interest. So I think a lot of people with the smartphones and so forth, there is need to relook at how we can sustain the media industry. And I think this committee will probably do a separate inquiry on that to see how best we can sustain the fourth estate and indeed the print media. So I just want to say, as a committee, we are very much interested and motivated to assist you so that media remains right at the heart of this country. You mentioned the issue of democracy. There can be no democracy without media, because you are the people who tell people what is going on. And the job of government is only made easy if there is a good, if there is media that is doing its job appropriately. And again, to the film industry, the film board, we are on, we are right on course with that one, and I think we agreed in Mashingo with the speaker that we should have a film board, and it should happen in the last quarter of this year. So we are already starting to work on that and to ensure we have a film board in place, and we can have a sustainable film industry in this country. I think it's high time. We talk about Hollywood, we talk about Bollywood. One of the surprising things is because of the Nigerian film industry is growing, and you see it on Netflix, you see, people would think that it's only in Nigeria where they have big mansions, but actually we do have mansions here in Zimbabwe, quite big and a lot, but we just don't showcase ourselves as Zimbabwe like what other countries do. South Africa is definitely leading, because even Netflix are shooting films in South Africa. I open my Netflix every day and I see there's a new film from South Africa. So, Zimbabwe, it's time that we catch up with the world in terms of film, and our committee will do its work to ensure that we put that thrust forward, so that when the next time when the budget is presented in December, we don't want it to be the norm that the Ministry of Information gets the least amount of money, yet we have a massive potential in terms of the media industry. So this committee will work hard to make sure that when we appropriate money, because it's Parliament who actually appropriates money to government entities, we want to make sure that media is right at the top. Like you said, if we could fund media like we fund agriculture, then there will be more potential for growth and jobs in this country, and I certainly agree with you. So I want to thank you for coming, and we will begin our tour next week for the Zim Digital Project, and we look forward to meeting you there. So thank you.